DC Municipal Corporations and Illegal Corporate Takeovers by Anna von Reitz. Information provided to H.E. Cardinal Mamberti and the Vatican Chancery Court in regard to our claims March 6, 2005, January 19, 2023, in seek. False claims that we are or ever were, Maritime Admiralty Products, and not land assets, dust thou art, and to dust returneth, in contravention of the Bible and our treaties and international law, were used to unlawfully securitize living flesh belonging to Americans, and then more false claims were used to impersonate us as British Crown corporations and municipal corporation franchises. Both of these acts of unlawful conversion and political misrepresentation are capital crimes. The same municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia are responsible for acting under color of law and falsely registering millions of Americans as property belonging to the British Monarch, and also, as part of their 1937 collusion, as municipal persons of various kinds, engaged in two vicious undisclosed commercial mercenary actions against the lawful governments of Germany, Japan, and other nations. They were not acting for us, nor under any contract they ever had with us. While they pointed at us as their employers, and pretended that they were defending us and our interests, they were in fact in gross breach of trust and acting without any authority related to us. They fingered us for the expenses of their wars, and after their wars, their phony war-related bankruptcies. They were acting on their own volition as bullies and criminals, albeit, bullies and criminals who had obtained illegal and unlawful access to our credit thanks to equally criminal colluding banks that profited from all this. This following brief video by Jordan Maxwell lays out the basic mechanics of the commercial fraud committed by the municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia. He understood a lot about the Great Fraud, but apparently Jordan Maxwell never figured out how the perpetrators were dumping their war debts on the American public via pre-planned bankruptcies and rat-holing the profits in slush funds under their own control, for us. https://www.youtube.com, watch, V equals 7 grams 3 JLQSICGK and T equals 85s. These horrific mafia-like commercial wars were never declared by any land and soil jurisdiction Congress and fail all tests for lawful war, as defined by international law, even though they were presented to the American public as if these acts of murder and violence were correct and justified. Each time by false flag operations carried out by the perpetrators themselves and blamed on their target. Too late we remember how the German papal overseers pretending to be kings in England usurped the actual governments of Britain via fraud that began with King John and was firmly seated by the Hanoverian succession in 1701 and further consolidated in 1840 when the German House of Wettin gained control of British assets that had been purloined ever since the Enclosure Acts under Henry VIII. The kings of Great Britain are Germans and Adolf Hitler was a British agent. Go figure. These Germans promoted war against their own motherland and used fraud, theater, false flags, and LGBTQ populations to do it. This is the same modus operandi of the guilty municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia now. Hitler made his appeal to the disenfranchised, harassed, marginalized members of the gay and lesbian communities, and most of his original brown shirts came from these communities, lured into his service with promises of social justice for homosexuals. As soon as the dirty work of Kristallnacht and the Reichstag fire promoted him to Chancellor, Hitler had the brown shirts arrested and most of them were killed to prevent them from soiling the lily-white image of Der Führer. In this country, the same guilty commercial interests are trying to build a coalition of LGBTQ supporters and colored people, who they also despise and use as pawns, to promote the same sort of uber-patriotic fake conservative revival as a backlash response to things like the 2020 riots, Kristallnacht, in which millions of Americans and American businesses suffered damage, and other false flags like the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines are being used to harm Europe and the infamous non-existent pandemic. Those who don't remember history may be fated to relive it, but we do remember. And we are fed up. We wish for these criminally inclined municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia to be liquidated for their violent, unlawful, and predatory crimes, and we wish for their political leaders to be removed from any appearance of public office, and outed as undisclosed substitutes for the actual President of our Federation of States or the President of our Federal Republic, both of which are unincorporated entities and unincorporated offices belonging to us. Strictly speaking, we don't need a president to function, and in view of the bad faith and disservice we have received at the hands of the presidents, operating either one of these municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia, we don't want either one of their presidents, in any position of power related to us or any of the misinformed Americans who have been taught, incorrectly, that they are some species of United States citizen. We wish for these offending municipal corporations to be shut down except for personnel needed to make a safe transition back to lawful money and lawful government. 2 world wars for profit as 2 phony illegal corporate takeover conflicts too many. We mourn the death, destruction, and misery that these municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia have caused us and the rest of the world. We wish to see amends made to us and everyone else, every other country, that has been harmed. We note that the world was a profoundly better place when both businesses and individuals were held accountable for their actions and inactions, and a reasonable fear of the consequences of their violent and immoral acts kept them from promoting commodity rigging schemes, false flags, pandemics, dishonest banks, and world wars. We highly recommend that the entire concept of municipal corporations operating in federal or other private enclaves be reviewed, and sacked. These municipal service providers have done nothing to merit existence in this country or any other. They have committed heinous crimes against their employers and everyone else with no apparent motive beyond making a profit for themselves at public risk and public expense. Their performance in no way justifies their continued existence as a class of legal fiction entities. Issued by Anna Maria Riesinger, Fiduciary. The United States of America in care of Box 520994 Big Lake, Alaska 99652.